So a very interesting interview came out regarding Todd Howard talking about the Elder Scrolls 6. He legit did the George R. R. Martin thing, where he's just sitting there and he's being like, I don't know why you're excited for this thing that we told you was coming 5 years ago. You know? Like, Nintendo is legit gonna put out another 3D Zelda before the Elder Scrolls 6 comes out. Like, you're gonna be waiting longer for the Elder Scrolls 6 than you had to wait for Grand Theft Auto 6. You know, that's insane if you think about it, but that's just the reality of where we're at now, is that these major AAA devs take so much time to get a project off the ground that it literally takes like 2 decades. Like, we are literally not going to get the Elder Scrolls 6 until like 2031. Like 20 years after Skyrim. Okay, Skyrim 2 took 20 years to make. It is like, it's the most insane thing in the world to think about. 20 years for a mediocre action RPG. Okay, 20 years to make something that's going to be dropped and forgotten, just like Star failed, like Fallout failed, like everything else they've done in the past, like, decade. Is that, like, Bethesda is, like, a complete shell of their former selves, and people really don't want to acknowledge it. People don't want to face a reality that the Elder Scrolls is not and never has been competitive with Zelda, because Zelda actually gets new releases. It's kind of like comparing, One Piece to, like, A Song of Ice and Fire, right? You know, One Piece is constantly innovating with new characters, new arcs, new islands, new concepts. You get crazy plot developments with the world government. It's way darker and more mature than Game of Thrones. You get all this stuff in One Piece, and then you look at, like, George, who hasn't published anything since like 2011, and he's just like, I don't know why you want Winds of Winter, guys. Don't you want to watch Night of the Seven Kingdoms? Like, don't you want to watch House of Dragons with the Black Valerians? Like, it's embarrassing. It's the same kind of mentality, really, where, like, these guys think they're hot shit and that they can, like, force people to wait indefinitely, and they still think the product is going to be a success, or that they think they can, or in George's case, they think they can just die and not have to work on it. Because, like, in a lot of ways, A Song of Ice and Fire is more valuable if it doesn't come out, because, it keeps George's name in the news, you don't get actual fan backlash, and you don't have to deal with the fact that, like, once the story is over, nobody really cares about you anymore. Okay? That's the problem with George. That's the problem with, like, I think Todd, is that the instant, like, Skyrim 2 comes out, the instant this comes out, like, the illusion is going to be shattered. Like, people are going to have this game, and the first thing they're going to think about is how Skyrim was better. And then, like, if you're, like, a more, like, discerning person, someone like myself, you're going to say that, like, Zelda was better than this. Skyward Sword was better, Breath of the Wild was better, Link Between Worlds was better, Tears of the Kingdom was better. Like, the Elder Scrolls 6 is going to get mogged by, like, every Zelda game in the past, like, 20 years. And, like, before that, even. But especially, like, Breath of the Wild and Tears. So, like, people are going to be looking at the Elder Scrolls 6 and realizing that, like, Breath of the Wild came out 15 years ago, and it's better than this. Tears of the Kingdom came out 8 years ago, and it's better than this. What the fuck were Bethesda doing? Okay, like, that's going to be, like, kind of the reality, I think, of what we're seeing going forward with the Elder Scrolls. Like, I don't think it's unprecedented that, like, Monolith Soft will put out an RPG that has a bigger open world and, like, more content than them. Okay, I don't think that's, like, unreasonable to think that's going to happen. They already did achieve that with Xenoblade Chronicles, but I think, like, with future installments, it's going to go even, like, beyond that. Like, Skyrim 2 is just never going to live up to the hype. And I would argue more so than Grand Theft Auto 6, because at the very least with Grand Theft Auto 6, they did get it out quicker. They didn't bog itself down with, like, a bunch of pointless releases of, like, the Elder Scrolls Online and Fallout 4 and Starfield and stuff like that. I hate Red Dead Redemption 2, but, like, I think it was better received than anything Bethesda's done in the past decade. And, like, I don't really feel like Grand Theft Auto is contested in its niche the way Skyrim was. Because when Skyrim came out, the narrative was that there was nothing like this. It's so open. There's so many things going on, so many plot lines. And now it's pretty much a staple for games to be like open world and like have better quest lines. You know, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet had a better quest system than Skyrim. You know, like Tears of the Kingdom had better quests than Skyrim. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 had better quests than Skyrim. You know, like again, there are just so many Nintendo games that do the same thing but better, and it's just so hard. You know, as someone who plays a lot of games, to even have any remote interest in Skyrim 2. Especially when they showed the logo 5 years ago. So basically what happened is that Todd Howard knew that, like, we have to announce the Elder Scrolls now because we don't have any other projects in the pipeline, and we have to keep investors happy, and we have to keep doing this. So they announced the Elder Scrolls 6 before it was ready to be shown off. So 5 years later, we haven't seen any gameplay. We haven't seen anything about it. We don't know anything about this game. And now Todd's, like, releasing statements about how mad he is about the development. You know, like, this does need to be spelled out. When Prime 4 was going through similar situations with, like, the cancellation and the reboot and Retro being handed the game, like, there were all these conspiracies and all these copes about how the game, how the development wasn't going well and how Nintendo was mistreating Metroid. You curiously don't see any of that with Bethesda. You curiously don't see anybody saying that, like, Todd Howard should be fired and that, like, they need to put the game out now. Like, no, people are perfectly happy waiting for the Elder Scrolls, like, indefinitely. You know, they are fine with waiting for Godot because, oh man, it's going to be the greatest thing ever when it does come out. Like, every single time they do this. And then when the game does come out, like, the masses just, like, kind of just look for the next thing to get excited about. You know, they consume the product, or don't consume the product, and then start fantasizing about the next project, okay? The next product. And it's a business model that I don't think is really sustainable, because I think we've seen what this results in when it comes to something like, Marvel, where eventually the bottom falls out and people start losing interest, you know? Like, people venerate, like, Game of Thrones and One Piece live action and the Elder Scrolls now, but I think, like, once the entire company falls apart and these games start being made, you know, there's going to be people, like, making YouTube videos asking where it all went wrong. And I do think this is where it started, is that Bethesda was not capable of putting out a game within a reasonable time frame. They were not capable of padding out their releases. They were not capable of, like, improving their model. They were a one-trick pony, basically. They basically just fell into a niche, found success on, like, generic platforms on the PS360, and then they just kind of milked it until, like, there was nothing more to milk. Like, Bethesda is finished, and it's high time that we really start acknowledging that.